Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. I've got a little bit of a different setup here today. We are in my loft for my long arm studio, and you can see, my light bar and my machine is back over here. I need to rip out these stitches. Okay. I decided to try variegated thread. You can see this is a very multicolor patriotic quilt of valor, and I want to do a pantograph across it. So that means that I need to choose one thread color that will just show up everywhere. So, if I use white, it'll disappear in this area and show up really bright on the blues and the reds. Same thing with a red, it would blend in. And I don't really mind the look of the dark stitching on the red and white areas. My problem is that this is a variegated thread, red, white, and blue. And I get little pokies here. This section right here is actually the white thread. You can a little bit up here too, white thread, but I'm getting little blue pokies because I'm using a blue thread on the back to match the back fabric. So I was not pleased with the look of that design. I only got, partway through my first row and decided to rip it out. And ripping out that date with Jack the Ripper is no fun. So I thought, I'll just come on YouTube and let my friends keep me company. So drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what your plans are this weekend. I was hoping to get this quilt done, so I've got some work to do before I get there. Let me adjust my camera here. Close your eyes if the motion of the workspace is going to make you dizzy. And I apologize for the ceiling fan going in the background, but I live in Arizona and ceiling fans are a requirement. So, okay. So you can see my work up here as soon as the camera kicks in. And I just hold that thread and I snap the bobbin threads, the back stitches, the bottom stitches, and keep that long tail going from my top thread as I rip. I find that to be the fastest way. And then every so often I break the top thread and start over by catching the top threads. Once I've got a long enough tail to hold on to, then I can come underneath and start snapping the bottom threads. I'm trying not to dig into my quilt top too much, but this is my process for seam ripping on my long arm. And I have to admit, it has not been a good year for long arm. I have had major sessions with Jack the Ripper on every single quilt that I have had on my long arm this year. Some have been like in January, I needed to replace the whole bobbin case. And, so the tension started going because the spring was wearing out. So there were, there was a big row of tension problems. And then when I put the new one in, I didn't have it adjusted correctly. So that was another row of problems. And, that's just, you figure that's going to happen. That's not necessarily a skill problem. If when parts wear out and they give you those signs, it's the same thing. Very experienced car drivers, they get flat tires every once in a while. You have to go replace the tire. Doesn't mean you're a bad driver. So these are the little self-talk speeches I give myself, so I'm not, getting too down in the dumps about spending time with Jack the Ripper. And this one, sometimes you experiment and experiments fail. So I thought the thread would be a decent choice and wasn't happy with how it looked, so I changed my mind. Better changing it now than, at the end when I think the whole thing looks horrible. So I am getting better at solving problems earlier, earlier in the process. And then I'm trying to think what quilts I did, what the problems were, but luckily I've blocked them from memory or just haven't been doing a whole lot of quilts. It's so satisfying when I can, just give a little tug and, 3 or 4 stitches will pull up at a time. Makes the process go a little bit faster. And this is a kind of a star motif and with some wavy lines. It's a really nice patriotic pantograph. So once I get my issues worked out, I can get this quilt done pretty quick. Pantographs don't take too long, maybe 10 minutes per row to stitch across a twin size quilt. Hey, Amanda, Stitching Life Together in the comments. Good to see you. Hope you're having more fun sewing on this holiday weekend than I am with my seam ripper. I do have another fun patriotic quilt, the one with the diamonds that I was working on Jolly Bar Day a few weeks ago. That is almost to a finished top. I just need to add another border and then it'll be a good donation size. So I'm excited to get back to that, but I need to get this done as well. I kind of keep myself on a timeline. I do one customer quilt each month, and I delivered the May quilt. So I have one more week before, in my self-imposed schedule before I load my June customer. And I wanted to get one done for myself because I have double digits, not just double digits, but major, like 20, 25 quilt tops that have not been quilted here in my studio. Because I sew pretty fast, when I go to, you hear me talk about my sew days. I have a couple sew days a month, so I spend hours piecing and so can get a top done in a couple months. But then it takes me years to actually get it loaded on the long arm. So I'm trying to be better about that because I don't want to leave tons of unfinished quilt tops for future quilters to have to figure out and deal with. Although that is good practice. You can, if you find a thrift store find or a garage sale, estate sale for a quilter or crafter, and you can take over, if you're a new long armor, those finishing tops that another quilter has left behind might be good practice. And I'm running into the bar of my tripod that I've got my second camera view sitting on, so it's making this a little awkward. And it's so sad that, this was literally 5 minutes or so of stitching, and it's taken me 3 hours to rip out. So frustrating. But all part of the process. What I've been telling myself when I get the seam ripper when I'm piecing is that I'm having so much fun, I'm going to do it twice. So we will just keep going and get all this ripped out and start over. And then we know what not to do. I'm trying to keep all my stray threads collected so I don't have a big cleanup mess at the end. I'm so impressed with all the other quilters who have their cameras set up to record while they work at the long arm. I am pretty low tech. I am doing this all from my tablet and my phone with one tripod and a little, step stool that I've piled some boxes on so that the tablet is high enough. My daughter is off at the swimming pool. That sounds like a fun place to be on the, Memorial Day, start of summer. What are all our plans? My husband and I coordinated. We're taking some time off work to go on a camping trip. And he's got a generator hook up all set. So he has said I can take my sewing machine and do some piecing, quilt in the woods. So that would be fun. And I'd have to definitely record that so that I can share that with you, what that looks like to sew from a camper van on location in the national forest. We didn't want to go camping this weekend. We figured everything would be so full on a holiday weekend to get out of town with the thousands of other people on the roads. Maybe someday. And we had actually been talking about going to some minor league baseball games for the Arizona Diamondbacks, obviously, are the major league team here that we follow, but their farm team, their AA, AAA teams are in other states. And so it would be fun to go watch some semi-pro baseball. Okay, for folks that are just tuning in, I am ripping out my stitches from this quilt that is on my long arm because I didn't like how the variegated thread looks on my machine. Right here is a section of white stitching, but it's when you're in person up close, it's got little blue pokies because my bobbin thread is blue to match the backing fabric. Cheryl is welcome. Nice to have you here. She agrees that it would be nice to camp and do quilting. I haven't decided if I want to take a machine. As I said, we have a generator in our camper, so I could plug in, take a little work table, but I'm thinking I'll just take my Hexie project. I've got two projects with hexagons, and I can get some work done on that. Just really, sounds nice and calming to be out in the fresh air working on something like that. And Amanda, Stitching Life Together, is in Northeast Indiana, and it's only in the 60s. I wish that sounds cold, actually, to me. I am a warm-blooded desert dweller. So yes, but sewing all day and taking a nap. I may need a nap after this session with Jack. But the only benefit is that I decided this didn't work on when I was only halfway through the first row. So it will only hurt for a little while. And I am on the second to the last motif. There's a star motif here, and the one over here to the left is where I started. So hopefully I can get this done quickly. And then, my husband's been working really hard in the garage to get it all cleaned out, and I really need to clean up this loft and my sewing space, especially because we have a new kitten, and right now she's isolated in my daughter's bedroom. We're being very cautious, and we're going to start the transition, letting her meet my older cat. My older cat has not been very nice in previous attempts. We had a kitten, and the older cat was very aggressive and territorial towards the kitten, and that kitten ended up getting sick and had to be put down when she was still pretty young. So we don't want to repeat the same mistakes. So we're being very cautious. We're going to introduce them slowly, but when she is allowed to come out of the house, out of the bedroom, I don't want her getting lost in all of my piles of quilt supplies and batting and things. So I need to figure out a new setup, because my long arm is in a loft that's open to the whole house. Obviously, it's not like I could close the door, which would be an ideal solution, but we had not planned ahead and now I'm getting to a section where I have blue thread on blue fabric and I can't see very well. So let me start up here and work backwards. If I have a thread to pull on, I can probably find it. But I will have another fun reveal for the channel, because my husband is fixing up a featherweight for me that we found in his mom's work shed. His parents had a separate garage work area, and the featherweight was just sitting out there, but it's in beautiful, beautiful condition, and I can't wait to get it all tuned up and start stitching on that. It'll be a wonderful machine. I have a big fancy baby lock with all sorts of extra stitches, but I only ever straight stitch. I occasionally do a zigzag. I've used the embroidery feature to do lettering twice. So I don't, I'd much rather just have that featherweight be my primary machine, and let someone else take over that baby lock. And so the other fun thing about Memorial Day is it always kicks off the summer movie season. And I was talking to a friend of mine at work, and she was saying she was going to go see Final Destination, the latest one of that kind of thriller. I don't know that you'd really call it a horror movie, but the one about the teenagers cheating death, or being able to see death coming. That does not appeal to me. I like action movies, but not where people, I was going to say not where people are dying. And people die all the time in action movies, but the good guys win. I don't need to have jump scares all the time, as my daughter calls them. And just give me regular guns and all, or the spies that are gonna save the world, and the Marvel movies, blowing up buildings and stuff. I can handle that. I just don't. Something about the psychological aspects of the horror movies get to me. Um, so movies were on my mind, and I looked at the coming attractions, wanted to see if there's anything out there. I really haven't been enamored of much that's been in the theaters lately, and we've gotten so spoiled with Netflix and Prime and all those streaming bits. And this section is not. Excuse me while I struggle with my stitches for a minute. So I was looking at the coming attractions for the summer lineup. I always like to know what's coming because we don't watch TV, so I don't see the trailers as much for, so you can't plan your movie going if you're not watching TV or anything. But the Karate Kid Legends, I'm looking forward to that. 80s kid, so give me some more Ralph Macchio. And yeah, that looks fun. And it's the same plot. The kid has to go to the tournament and beat the bullies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Karate Kid, but that doesn't come out till next weekend. And then I saw that they're making another Jurassic Park movie. And I do like that series. Again, totally predictable. Which one of the dinosaurs is going to come get loose from the cage and eat everybody. So let me know what movies and things I should be looking out for. Amanda's going to take her granddaughters to see Lilo and Stitch. That would be really fun. And her husband wants to see Mission Impossible. I'm not a Tom Cruise fan. So after the first Mission Impossible, I haven't kept up with that series. So, but hopefully it's, kudos for him for continuing to do all those action movies and things. Excuse me, I was just getting rid of some thread. I am looking forward to the Thunderbirds documentary on Netflix. And yes, of course, I watched the Quilter one. And I think what I liked best about the quilters is that they are making their own patterns. They were all original designs, which is exactly how I like to create. I find a block that I'm interested in making and then just see how it evolves. They've got the size and the colors they want to use, and then they just kind of improv the rest of the quilts. And it was so touching to see the foster kids. They had a shot of one girl or a couple of the kids spreading the quilts out on their bed, and then seeing the inmate's face when they got the thank you notes. That was really sweet. So if you've got access to Netflix, watch the Quilters. And then of course some people at work were asking me, "Oh, Andy, have you seen it?" And of course I watched it the first weekend it was available. So it's definitely getting the quilt hobby out to a bigger audience. That's fun. So I would say before you are rushing out to mail your fabric to the program in Missouri, I think is where that documentary was filmed. Check your local area. If your guild does not support donations to like an inmate program, check around. There actually may be a program in your local area that supports that kind of sewing program for inmates. I've heard of several around the country, so it wasn't a so seeing that documentary on Netflix was not the first time I had heard of inmates sewing quilts for charity. Okay. Making progress. I need to. Yes, Cheryl, definitely take time to watch the quilters. It's it's really fun. You might be inspired on your next. There is one quilt that uh, the gentleman says it was supposed to be 60s inspired, so think psychedelic colors. And that by the end, I liked it. At first, I was thinking, oh my goodness, but once you see it finished, it's really pretty. Okay, I'm going to look like I'm doing something else, but I need to check something on another screen. So pardon me for a moment as I switch my attention. Just checking some settings behind the scenes. Somewhere else. Isn't going to let me do what I wanted. Okay, so let me adjust the workspace. So close your eyes so you don't get motion sick. I'm going to aim over for this camera. I just have this little section to finish ripping. So let's get back at it. And this is my typical method for ripping stitches. I pull up a few, like 4 or 5 stitches till I have enough of a tail that I can hang on to. And then if I tug on it, it pulls the bobbin thread up, and then I slash the bobbin thread with my seam ripper. And that's how, and occasionally, yes, I stab the fabric. And sometimes at those corners, the stitches got smaller and they're harder to rip out. And then every so often, either I cut the top thread or it breaks, and I just start over, get myself a tail, and then. And so it's very slow because I'm ripping every stitch, every third stitch. And that can get very tedious. That's why you hate to rip out after you've been working on a long arm. It's much easier if I'm piecing and need to rip out just a short straight seam. I can do that with very little heartache. But ripping out my long arm stitches definitely makes me sad, which is why I came to you for solace and comfort and some company while I finish this. It's turning corners on these stars can get very tricky. Your thread builds up and takes it's hard to turn a sharp corner on a long arm sometimes. So that's what I was dealing with right there. The other thing that happens a lot, well, we're here in Arizona. School ends early, so we're about done with graduation season by the end of May. Mid May to around the 20th to the 25th are all the graduations. So then I'm wondering, and a lot of time I'm wondering who has summer wedding anniversaries. I got married on the 4th of July, actually, so that's another reason why you will see me doing a lot of patriotic quilts. That color scheme just makes my heart sing for all sorts of different reasons. But yes, 4th of July. So we have fireworks every year on our anniversary. And I'm wondering how many of you were June or July brides. We went out to dinner a couple years ago on our anniversary, and it was so hot that we were standing outside at a resort waiting for like the resort taxi to come take us to the restaurant. My shoes melted. That's how hot it gets in Phoenix when you are standing on the sidewalk. Oh, Amanda, June 26th. So yes, June bride. Happy anniversary early. You've got about a month. And then we got married in 2001. So next year, 26, will be our 25th anniversary, which will also be the 250th US birthday. So we get to have a huge celebration on July 4th. So we were thinking about, doing some fun trip to one of the big cities that's having, the crazy stuff. And then we decided the crowds would be too much. So we'll do something else to commemorate 25 years. We tend not to do big extravagant things, and I think we deserve it. So I'm gonna plan a fun trip and drag my husband along. And reading back in the comments, Cheryl was saying she doesn't like the crazy quilt blocks. They look too erratic. So nice and orderly, Cheryl, I'm sorry. I'm kind of the same way. I like scrappy quilts, but with a plan. So, color blocking your scraps, choosing just one or two blocks to repeat would be a better way. I haven't really been ever in love with the crazy quilt blocks. Star blocks are my favorite, and you can see here I love to make friendship stars from Jelly Roll strips. And my Quilt Guild is having a rainbow quilt challenge this year. Each month they pick a different color, and if you're participating, you can make any block you want with that color. So some people are doing like colored pencils. So each month they make a different colored pencil, big block, big row for their quilt. My mom picked out a pattern that kind of has a wheel shape. It's not an exact Dresden, but it's a paper pieced kind of circular pattern that's really pretty. So that's been fun. And another lady is doing like little miniature flying geese blocks. So that's really fun to see. Oh, Cheryl, how interesting. Quality assurance tech in manufacturing. That definitely means you have an eye for detail, I'm sure. Uh, and very fun that it got you into quilting. So that's fantastic. I was a high school teacher for many years, and now I develop adult training materials. Um, and so that's why I'm here on YouTube explaining quilting, because I have to teach. My core element of my personality. Let me show you how to do that. I know this isn't too fascinating for people, so if you've got something more fun to do on a Sunday afternoon, definitely get going. My husband walked through and thought I was very strange standing here talking to myself, but I've got all my fun internet friends keeping me company while I finish ripping out the thread that I don't like. And long ago, I gave up variegated threads. Part of the reason is the pokies, and it looks okay in the border, but along this white fabric, the areas that had white thread, and I didn't match my bobbin. I mean, it would be impossible. Even if you wound the bobbin with variegated thread, it would be impossible for the colors to line up all the time. And so occasionally you'd have white thread with blue bobbin poking up, and it doesn't look good. No matter how good your tension is, you're always going to get those pokies. And so the other reason I don't like variegated threads is because, and I'm trying to look in my camera to see if it shows up. There's just like this one tiny line of the star is white thread, and then the blue sections of the variegated fade into the fabric. And so those small pops of color make it impossible to see the overall quilting design. So it just, for a variety of different reasons, and plus the color run is so short. I've only got, a small segment of each color, and it's too much, too chaotic. Going back to Cheryl saying everything needs to be organized and in its place. So variegated threads would be fun, I think, if you had just kind of a gentle meander or straight lines, where those pops of color in all the various places would add interest to the pattern. But for this quilt, they are just too distracting. So I got halfway done with my first row. The thread broke. I took a look at it and said, ooh, I am not liking that. So it was a good stopping point to and it's not completely demoralizing. I have another quilt that I messed up on, and I just kept going thinking it would quilt out and look okay once I took the quilt off the frame, and no, it's horrible. So I have a whole quilt to rip out. That's another project I may take on the camping trip, because we can just sit and listen to the birds in the trees, and it, if you're in a nice environment, it won't hurt so much, right? To take out an entire quilt's worth of stitching. So Amanda says, I thought of you yesterday, Andy, when I was shopping at my local quilt shop, because she bought some patriotic batiks. How fun. Yes, thank you for thinking of me. Not that she's going to send me those patriotic batiks, but I'm glad I can provide inspiration. Seems to be the theme. I use some of my batik stash here in the border. And all of these squares here, the yellows in the corner, all came from my stash. I need to stop buying and keep sewing, because I can get so many quilts out of my stash, and I definitely want to do that. And I was reading my guild newsletter just to double check some sizes of quilts that they want for, we have like 4 or 5 groups that we support with our charity quilting, and my family has plenty of quilts, so they are not deprived if I quilt for charity. And I mean, some patterns I make just because I want the challenge. I want, to support a certain person. The quilt has been on my mind for a long time as something I want to make. But I really like to have a destination in mind and not just pile up quilts because I like them at the time. Stuck here. A stitch that didn't want to come out. Pull all these threads as I go so I don't have as big of a cleanup job at the end. And I'm sorry you see the top of my head. It was very difficult to get camera set up for this project. So I'm thinking about putting together a workshop for quilters that want to start a YouTube channel, or crafters in general. I mean, I suppose the principles could go for knitting and crochet. So we definitely want to talk about the equipment, and I need to brainstorm a list of things to talk about when you're on a live, because you can see I have lots of practice just rambling with whatever, the weather, sports. We've covered movies, camping. Looks like Amanda and I are the only summer weddings. Not that we're celebrating anniversaries. At one point, we were summer brides. Vacation plans is another good one. Cheryl was saying that she is in a quality assurance position, technical field, and I was a teacher. I've heard of a lot of quilters are nurses. What have you found to be the most common career for quilters? Teachers and nurses to me are the top two, and it would be interesting to study. There's the whole slow stitching philosophy that, when you slow down and create something with your hands, it improves your mental health. It activates that creative part of your brain. Is it the altruism of the teaching and nursing fields that they want to be giving something, comforting others? That's a basic desire. Okay, and now we're in a section of blue threads on blue fabric that we need to look very, very closely at. Amanda, yeah, teachers and nurses. Although I'm going to move this camera, so watch. I'm going to leave the stage and you'll just see the workspace camera for a minute. Okay. Back in action. I just moved the camera to the other side of my long arm. You can see my second camera set up here so that I can finish out. I just have this small little section. Yay. I think I was way over past this snowball block when we started. So you guys are inspiring me to get this tedious project finished. Amanda, you've been doing great on your channel as a new YouTuber, jumping in with regular live streams, guesting on other people's channels. That's fabulous. I need to put a schedule together to do that, to have guests here on the live stream, because StreamYard, the platform I use as my live stream host, is fabulous. They let you have multiple cameras and you can easily interact with people in the chat. It's wonderful. So and we had Amanda, one of your earlier comments was that you shared over in Discord. I have a Discord server, is what they call their chat rooms, for quilters on YouTube. So if you are interested in monetizing specifically and talking the strategy of YouTube as a business, as a potential income stream, then send me an email and I will happily invite you to that community. Discord is a fun place to hang out because you can have the message threads like you do on other platforms like Facebook, but you don't have all the ads and the different feeds. It's very targeted. Oh, you're very welcome, Amanda. She took our advice in the Discord group, and we've been doing a lot of Q&A, and the community is just really fantastic and helpful over there. So for anyone else, the link to Discord only is live for like a week, so that's why I don't generate it for every video, but just email me and I can easily send you. And my email is info@truebluequilts.com. So if you ever want to share pictures or anything, I love show and tell. So one of the things I was discussing with my quilt group yesterday was some longer sew days, like a staycation, sleep at home camp, where we could just gather at the quilt shop during the day and then, go home at night. So it kind of like a retreat, but very no frills type of activity. And I was thinking about putting together some like quilters trivia games or bingo or something, like with pattern designer names, but I don't know how well known designers are. I know a lot of designers because I'm active in the designer community. So I online, way more than I should be. Just scrolling, and so I see a lot of posts and I feel like I know a lot of the names in the quilt world, but I don't know that the gals that I sew with even care, so that wouldn't be a good topic for a bingo game. Maybe I'll just do quilt block names. Amanda is saying your shop wants to have some open sew days. Yeah, it's fabulous that they have allowed me to take over the classroom once a month for my group, and we pay a very nominal fee. It's not a full class fee. It's just basically I'm going to pay to reserve my spot at the table. And then you just come and work on whatever project you want. And we get the same ladies coming month after month. So we've really formed some good friendships. And then occasionally we make plans to go to more formal retreat centers and do other things. So that's been fun. Okay, coming up on another difficult section, the blue thread on the blue fabric. It's kind of like feeling your way around a dark room. You keep your hand on the wall, so I'm very focused on that line of stitches. I've got my long thread here, so I keep whoops, broke it off there at the corner of the design. Okay, but I'm keeping it going here. And I so appreciate all of my viewer support. I have a great audience here on the True Blue Crew. I am generally live every Wednesday afternoon. I am in the Pacific time zone, so for me it's after work, but for you folks on the East Coast it is after dinner time, depending on how late or not. Usually it's 4 p.m. Pacific, so that's 7 p.m. Eastern. And I work on different projects. I do a lot of cotton cuts, kits, mystery quilts, and I keep bumping the tripod there, so I apologize for the jumpy cameras. And a lot of scrappy projects and things, but it's just a time to come and hang out. If you watch the replays of those Wednesday live sessions, I much appreciate the extra view time here on YouTube. YouTube has other channel features like memberships and super thanks, where you can donate to your favorite YouTubers. And I have not turned those options on because I generally don't think about it. I have gotten some, at one point I had it turned on and I did get a nice little thank you donation, so appreciate that. But if I have positively impacted your quilt life, you can certainly support me with just continue watching. That's the easiest way. I do have patterns for sale on my website, truebluequilts.com, and I am part of some online summits this year where I do some teaching with my half rectangle triangle quilts. And there is Karen so-and-so. Hi. She just said hi in the chat. Yeah, I am tackling a ripping project and thought, I'm sitting here silent, feeling lonely. And so I came online to find my peeps, my True Blue Crew. So yes, this is an impromptu live session, just to, rather than talk to myself, I will talk out loud to my online friends. Hubby's downstairs. He was working in the garage, getting things all cleaned up and organized, as men do. And I was hoping to just have a lovely afternoon of pantographs, but I chose a variegated thread for this patriotic quilt, and I didn't like how the variegated thread looks. There is just a little bit of white stitching right here that does not look bad. The variegated thread on this darker fabric actually looked fine. It was when I got into the white fabric that the red, white, and blue thread that I was using on top gave me some pokies with the bobbin thread, and I didn't like how that looks. So I am ripping out and starting over. And hopefully today and tomorrow, since I don't have to go to work, I can get this last tiny little section ripped out here in the next half hour or so, and then make good progress on the pantograph. And I'm telling myself I have 1 week to get this quilt done, because I need to start a new customer quilt in June, and I have this, this lucky extra week in May. And then I also want to show this quilt at my guild meeting, which is the first Tuesday of June. So if I can get it off the long arm this week, then I can do the binding next weekend and be ready for the first Tuesday in June. And Karen is asking what color thread. I decided actually on a light blue. I was trying to think of where I put my, so I've got this just kind of light blue. And the way I audition threads is I give myself a really long piece and I drape it over, and then I keep the spool well away from the thread, because if you hold the whole spool up to the fabric, it gives you a skewed impression because that's a lot of color. You're not going to see that much of the thread color. You're only going to see this tiny line. And so it shows up on the dark, it shows up a little bit on the light, and I think it'll be a nice calm color. It's not in your face anywhere. It'll blend in, it'll stand out a little bit, but not glaring in with light thread on the darker backgrounds. And I auditioned a lot of threads. Let me tell you. Let me grab the variegated. I thought I stuck it here in my bin. I put it away in a different cabinet, and I need to be ripping out, not having a huge thread discussion. Where did I leave off ripping? Anyway, so yes, a medium color. The trick with stark contrast on your quilts, like red, white, and blue has a lot of contrast. The white, is dramatically different. And you're going to have that with a lot of quilts. Pink and purple, teal and orange. Those are high contrast color combinations. So what color do you choose? Well, don't match either one. Find a medium tone, like a gray or a tan or a light green, a light blue, that's a little bit different from both colors that you're trying to work with. And it'll blend with both of them and be a good choice. So I got caught up in the moment thinking that a variegated red, white, and blue on a patriotic quilt would look good. And like maybe if it was, I was going to say a blue and white 2-color quilt, but yeah, that would be tricky. Maybe with a different block pattern, like a panel, or I don't know what would look good with variegated threads. I liked them a lot when I was first quilting, and I have talked myself out of them more often. Although I do like, as I was just looking through my thread bin, I have some variegated threads that are all in the same color family. Like I have a spool of King Tut that is gold, like a sand. And so there's some golds and some lighter tans. So those kind of variegated are gorgeous, when they're like, they go from a light green to a dark green, or, reds and pinks and purples all together, as long as there's not a sharp contrast. Like the red, white, and blue is going to give you too much contrast everywhere. Thank you. I'm just reading back. Okay. Amanda says she bought a necklace late. Oh, talking about where I couldn't see my blue thread on my blue fabric. Yeah. Um, my mom has one of those neck lamps for, she does knitting in the evenings when she's watching TV, and she'll use one of those. So I try to repeat my instructions for the folks that came on late. If you're wondering my technique strategy for seam ripping on a machine quilting, so whether it's on your long arm or on your domestic and you have to rip out sections of free motion quilting, I start somewhere and I pull up a tail. So I'm holding that tail in my left hand. And then I am trying to gently pull up the bobbin thread, and that's what I'm catching with the seam ripper. And that way I can just keep this top thread long. Occasionally I can pull out more than one stitch at a time. And I just keep going with this nice long thread as much as I can until I come to a corner that's got a tight spot of stitching, or the thread breaks, or I just decide it's getting too long and hard to manage. And then I just snip it, pick out all these little tails along the way so I don't have a huge cleanup project at the end. Clean as you go. Isn't that the way you do it when you're in the kitchen, so you don't have a big mess of dishes? My husband's really good about that. When he cooks, he cleans as he goes. So and then I'm starting again up here, so I'm picking out a few stitches until I have a tail to hold on to, and then I can come underneath level with the fabric and cut those bobbin threads. I do have to be careful because occasionally I go down and the seam ripper stabs the fabric. And I'm at an awkward angle because I've got the tripod stand here. Glad people are having success with those neck lamps. So those of you that shop on Amazon, I need to put an Amazon link in my video descriptions, because that's one of the ways that you can easily support your favorite online creators. Because if they have an Amazon link somewhere, even if you don't want the specific thing that they link to, Amazon will pay them a little bit out of their advertising budget if you use their link. I know it's hard to remember. I don't do it either, but it's my husband and my daughter are the ones that shop on Amazon. I typically don't, unless I'm buying a specific gift for somebody, then I'll go to Amazon. Otherwise, just run to the store. You guys, I'm closing in on a finish here. I've got two more little curves there, too. Segments. There's a branch here and then a branch up there. So you have certainly motivated me to keep going and get this chore done. I went to the library on Friday and brought home a big pile of books. You know, when you have an extra day off work, I'm like, that's always my favorite thing, besides quilting, is to curl up with a good book. And That's another thing I can do to give you guys some Amazon links to my summer reading list. I found some really interesting, I like mysteries, and I found some really good ones. And World War II stories. I picked up one that is about a Jewish girl hiding from the Nazis. So I'll finish that and write a review. If anybody else likes historical fiction. Kate Quinn is my favorite author for historical fiction. She wrote a book. The first book of hers that I read was called The Huntress. It was about a Russian female bomber pilot. Fascinating. And then she's written a couple about like the Enigma code breakers. She wrote a novel about them. She wrote another one called The Alice Network, which was about female spies in World War I. I loved. And I've also been thinking about getting back into blogging. I need to revive my blog. It's been a couple of years since I wrote an article for my blog. I definitely need to do that. All these factors when you have an online business. Oh, Karen, and catching up on comments, and Karen says her favorite sewing machine is in the shop for a spa day. You will have a wonderful experience when it comes home, but yes, I can understand that is hard to survive. We'll get through it together, me, Jack, and you and your missing machine. Amanda is making table runners from strip sets. How fun. Yes, Karen, I will definitely work on that summer reading list. Amanda, yeah, she just signed up for Amazon affiliates, and it's so hard to remember to put those links in and then to get people to click on them too. And then Karen is saying, clean as you go. Yeah, I know. I'm guilty of, I stack all the dishes, but then when the stuff goes in the oven, I just want to go sit down and take a break instead of, being a good doobie and washing the dishes. But I'm getting better. Yeah, but having helpers in the kitchen, one clean and one cook, is definitely the way to go. Okay. Movement warning. I'm going to adjust the workspace camera, so look away so that you don't get motion sick as I come over here to finish this last corner of stitching. And I'm sorry, the tripod is just like right in my face on the camera. At least I'm not hitting it with my cheek anymore because I'm on the other side. It would be, at one point I thought about putting some bars from the ceiling to get those overhead shots, and I'm going to move this camera as well so you get a better view. It looks like I'm not hiding off the screen. Have a camera mount above, so then but that would probably involve like remote control options for the camera to start, and I've never been good with those clickers. So let's talk quilt backs. I have some wide back fabric, the 180-inch backing for this quilt. So it's all a solid color, just a nice navy blue that'll coordinate. So all of my stitching will show. I said a little while ago that I'm going to switch from this variegated thread to a light blue that will show up on all areas of my quilt, but it won't be overpowering in any one area. And once I get a good section of thread here, I'll show you the variegated that I've been using. It's probably not gonna. You can see from the scraps I've got, you know, very little white, lots of red and blue, but of course that's the bobbin thread too, is all the navy blue. And that was one of the reasons I decided to see, here's the thread, the red and the blue, is because in the red and the white areas of the thread, the blue bobbin thread was really standing out, and I didn't like the pokies, technical term here that quilters use when the bobbin thread shows through. This is reminding me of that, what was it, Electric Light Orchestra band in the 70s. Don't Fear the Ripper. Reaper, I think, was the original version. Now I've got that song going through my head. What's your music selection? I go back and forth between the 80s station, the light rock station, and country in the car radio, but I never have to drive very far. My quilt shop is only a few miles away, and same thing with my gym. But I go to the gym to swim laps, and they have the most, like, if you remember Enya back in the day, the kind of instrumental chant, it's depressing. Like all the classical music that's slow and heavy. I'm like, this is not inspirational for my workout, people. I need a more lively selection of music in the pool area. And Amanda listens to podcasts. Thank you. That's how we met. Amanda has been a supporter of the Quilting on the Side podcast. So yes, and I should do that more. Sometimes I'd rather listen to the music than talking, but yes, podcasts are a great resource. I'm catching up on Amanda's comment. She likes her quilting to add to the design rather than overwhelm the piecing, and I totally agree. That's why I typically use coordinating thread, and that was my fear with a pantograph on this particular quilt, is that it's gonna stand out too much and draw too much attention to the quilting. But I just can't see the effort it would take to do custom and match the threads to all these different areas. So I'm just going to do an overall pattern and be done with it. And that sounds ungrateful, and I don't mean to sound that way. I just finished ripping out. Hooray, hooray. You guys, you did it. You helped me survive. Find these last few stitches right on the very edge. As I was saying, it's not that I want to just get this quilt done and out of here. I want a deserving veteran to be comforted by a finished quilt and not have it sitting in my house waiting for me to do the custom quilting on it. So that is my rationalization. Okay, I'm gonna run my fingers. I still have some threads here. It's like I'm scratching under the surface of the quilt along the quilting lines, and that will loosen up any other threads there and help close up some of these stitching holes. But this quilt will definitely be washed with many color catchers because it's all stash fabric. I have no idea. I'm not the best pre-washer, so I'm hoping I don't end up with pink snowballs when I am done, but we'll cross our fingers when we come to that stage. Yes, Amanda, turn on the camera and go live while you're sewing. I have thoroughly enjoyed everybody keeping me company this afternoon. So as you can see, there's no reason to fear Jack. Necessary skill to have as a quilter is learning how to rip out, and it's definitely more fun with friends. So thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I suppose I could keep the camera on while I do the first pattern. So why don't we do that? Give me a second to get all the adjustments made. You may see the cameras move, but I will be right back as we set up. You can see I pin my quilts and my top is floated. Get all ready here. I have to put my uniform on, my little Kai scissors on a lanyard, and that's how I get ready for quilting. Long arm quilting is to put my scissors on. That's my uniform. So I already have everything all pinned and basted in place. The pantograph is set up. So I just need to find a bobbin and decide where I want the camera to set up. Okay, so this one will move back. And we'll angle it there so you'll see the machine run across that. And then I will bring, okay, I have to walk around the table, so I'll be out of view for a minute. Camera is moving. Camera is moving. You see my space all set up as we walk around the end of the long arm. Okay. So now you've got the opposite view. Hello again. Okay, just checking. Haven't had any other comments other than the thumbs up for watching some long arm work. So we said that I'm going to switch from my variegated to my light blue. And I was looking for my variegated thread. That's because it's still on the machine. I'm so silly. Here is the, let's see, where is it? The spool of variegated, and you can see that there is a lot of red and blue and not much white. So it was looking very stark against that white fabric. So we will put this together. I'll probably donate this partial spool. And if another long armor or quilter wants to use it, I keep all of my long arm bobbins in one of these cases. And then I just have to match because I wind several at a time. And so I take the bobbin, I let a thread dangle, and I lay it across the spool. And that's how I can check if it is the same color. You know, the skewers or the plastic pieces and keep their bobbins, their wound bobbins with their cones. I've never taken the time to do that. But this works pretty well. That one's a little bit lighter, so I don't think that's the match for this. Okay. Bobbins get put away. Okay, so now I have to attach my cone. I leave my machine threaded with whatever the previous color is. I just snip it next to the cone. And then when I add the next cone, I tie my thread tails together. Okay, so that's thread is tied together. I come back around to the front of my machine, and let me see, can I pull this over so it'll be on camera, and scoot around here. I'm in the way of my other camera. I pull the thread to the front of my long arm and it's tied together, so I am threading it using the previous thread. And then I should probably move my trash can to this side of the camera so I'm not always doing that. Jess is here. How are you on this holiday weekend? And Jess is another teacher. You finished up the school year. How fun. Enjoy your time off. As a former teacher, I know how blissful those first few weeks of vacation are. Unless you have summer duties, Jess, let me know. I'm just finishing threading my long arm, and then I'm going to start a row of pantograph quilting. So, loading a bobbin. I've got partial bobbins wound from the last time I used this color, so I won't have to wind one to start, although that would probably have been a good idea before I threaded the machine. Okay, so there we go. All good to go. Okay, so for anyone, a paper pattern that I lay on the table behind my machine, and then I use a laser light that's attached to my machine, and the laser follows the line while the machine is stitching. So I've got that all set up from earlier. So let's get into position. I've got the starting position for the quilting lined up here. And I just take a single stitch to start, pull up my threads, and here we go. Okay, that was one complete row of my pantograph. Let me look at the paper, and it's called Patriot from Urban Elements. I get most of my pantographs from, sorry about all the noise there on the table behind my setup. The design is called Patriot from Urban Elements, Elements with a Z. That's who I get most of my paper pantographs from. They also have digital, so if you have that type of machine. So I am all hand guided. I have to drive my machine. It is not computerized. Maybe someday I'll switch, but for now I really enjoy the hand guided aspect of long arm, and I do a lot of custom quilting for customers. For a lot of my own quilts, for charity quilts, I do a pantograph like this. It's pretty quick and easy for me. I can probably get this quilt, a few hour sessions. As you saw, it only took me 10-15 minutes to do that row of quilting, and it's a small twin size large throw 60 by 70 inch quilt for Quilts of Valor. So let me come back around to the other camera, my workspace camera, and show you a detail shot of the quilting before we move on with our day. Okay, I'm going to be walking in front of the camera. I apologize. And the workspace camera is moving. Sorry. Okay, that was your tour of the Patriot Pantograph and my Quilt of Valor project. Thank you so much, Karen. The encouragement that the design looks good. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I do like that light blue solid thread better than the variegated that I started off the broadcast ripping out. And so now I've got one complete row finished, and I am going to say goodbye for now. As Winnie the Pooh would say, ta-ta, and hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and spend some time with family. Enjoy the kickoff to summer, and I will be back on Wednesday with a piecing project. Happy quilting. See you soon.